What you're looking at right now is one of the largest abandoned complexes in Ontario. Hidden in the forests of Prince Edward County sits the remains of Prince Edward Heights. During the Second World War, this land was part of a massive military training base known as Camp Pikton. After the military closed the base in 1969, the site was transformed into a huge institutional facility that housed hundreds of people with developmental disabilities. For decades, this hilltop complex operated like its own small community. Then in 1999, it shut down. The buildings were left behind. And over the years, this forgotten place has become everything from a legendary paintball battlefield to one of the most famous urban exploration sites in Ontario. Today we're going inside to see what's still left of it. Walking through these empty halls, it's hard not to imagine what this place looked like when it was still operating. For decades, Prince Edward Heights housed hundreds of residents, and these corridors would have been filled with staff, patients, and the constant movement of daily life. Now, it's completely silent. Most of the rooms have been stripped out over the years. Furniture gone, equipment removed. Almost everything that once made this place function has disappeared. But every once in a while, something gets left behind. Something that reminds you what this place used to be. And I think I may have just found one of those things. Because sitting right here in this room is something that absolutely should not still be here. Let's take a closer look. This entire complex sits on land that was once part of Camp Pikton, a large military training base established during the Second World War. Thousands of soldiers trained here before heading overseas, and the surrounding countryside would have been busy with military vehicles, aircraft activity, and constant movement. When the base closed in 1969, many of the existing buildings were repurposed by the Ontario government. The site became Prince Edward Heights, a residential institution that housed hundreds of people with developmental disabilities and employed a large staff that worked and lived in the area. For decades, this hilltop complex operated like its own small community. But by the late 1990s, changing policies around institutional care led to the facility shutting down. Since then, the buildings have slowly been left to time, weather, and the forest that now surrounds them. At its peak, Prince Edward Heights was home to hundreds of residents and a large staff who worked across the facility every day. The property functioned almost like a small village, with multiple residential buildings, administrative offices, maintenance structures, and support services spread across the hilltop. When the institution closed in 1999, many of the buildings were simply locked up and left behind. Over time, the site began attracting photographers, urban explorers, and eventually large groups of paintball players when part of the property was converted into the well-known PRZ paintball field. But once that closed as well, the buildings were abandoned again. Today, what remains is a huge collection of empty structures slowly deteriorating, while the forest continues to reclaim the land around them. Long before this place became Prince Edward Heights, this land was part of a much larger military installation, known as Camp Pikton. The base was built during the Second World War, and quickly became an important training site for both the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Royal Air Force. Air crews trained here on bombing and gunnery ranges, and the skies over Prince Edward County would have been filled with aircraft preparing for missions overseas. Thousands of servicemen passed through the base during the war years. Even after the war ended, the military continued using the site for training and support operations for decades. But by the late 1960s, Canada began consolidating many of its military facilities. In 1969, Camp Pikton was officially closed, and the property began its next chapter as the institutional complex that eventually became known as Prince Edward Heights. One of the most surprising things about Prince Edward Heights is just how large the property actually is. Spread across a huge section of Prince Edward County, the site contains dozens of buildings connected by long access roads, service areas, and open land that once supported both the military base and the institutional facility that came later. At one time, this hilltop was constantly active, with staff, residents, maintenance crews, and vehicles moving between buildings throughout the day. But today, it feels completely different. The roads are empty, the buildings sit silent, and the forest has slowly started reclaiming the space that once supported an entire working community.